现在讲那个
Let's look at this memoir. In the second stop in Boulder,
博尔德的这个道场当中，在这里面就是用了一个国外的一个人的他的一个
a recollection,
本来他提供
a personal encounter story was quoted over here. In fact, she provided quite a bit of material, but I only pick some out of her writing. She also talked about her practice and her experience and so on, but here I mainly picked the part where she talked about her experience with Phuntsok Rinpoche. Some introductions were also given to
本人他自己都是已经就是看了的就是本人自己
to supplement to the material, and these parts of the descriptions, including the introduction, the description, and then the encounter stories, were then reproved by the interviewers themselves. A few years ago, when I was giving talks in the U.S., I met an American Buddhist named Leah Groth. She attended the lecture that Phuntsok Rinpoche had given at Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado during his trip in 1993 to the United States. It was actually a very large church, and this church would be used as a venue for weddings and different kinds of large events. A few years ago, I was requested and invited to give a teaching over there at this particular church again. I said, yes, I would like to come and visit and give teachings again, but not sure if I would like to give teachings at the same church again, because it would bring me up some of the bittersweet memories and the heartache. Anyhow, let's return to Leah's story. Leah said that after she attended that lesson given by Phuntsok Rinpoche, then as she recounted that her life underwent incredible transformation. So she described her experience as with the following words. Well, when she was younger, Leah was quite a confused girl with lots of turbulent emotions, and she said that I met Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche when I was 13 years old. At that time, I was a little moody and more interested in hiding than being friendly to others, which is a similar trait to many of the single child, the children from a single child family. And she said that I had been raised by Tibetan Buddhists by my Euro-American parents, who were most active members of a Tibetan Buddhist group. I think back around that time, many of the locals were quite active, interacting with different Tibetan Buddhist groups. So Leah is definitely the second generation Buddhist raised child. There are people who are the second generation of the high authority family, of the rich family, of so on and so forth. But she was a Buddhist, a second generation of a Buddhist family. For about a decade, this group invited all different Nyingma teachers to come to stay. And we received a real wealth of different teaching and styles. As I had no sibling to distract me and no other family in the area to take care of me, I was the only one of us, the second generations in the group, who regularly attended anything at the center. In fact, the Sanji Khandro invited the family, and that's why they came to the teaching. It was already dark when we arrived at an odd-shaped church about 30 minutes away from our house. The building was not terribly inviting, and inside was surprisingly typical. It was hard to believe that we were in a church. church because there were no crosses or dangly sons of God anywhere. I was fairly critical by nature. She had lots of doubt back then. I think that's very similar to the Westerners nowadays, especially people who children raised in good wealthy families. And that day I entered that auditorium being very grumpy and skeptical. I don't remember well how it all got started, but I remember there were a lot of people on the stage. And at first I was not even sure which one was the important person that we had driven all this way in the dusk to see. I think it must have been a very busy scene at that time. There were lots of people on the stage and some blowing the conch and some doing this and that, so she wasn't so sure who was the important person that they came to see. It was not a very typical Tibetan thing, though. Not that I do remember. I was used to gold and brocade and implements and chanting, but this was very simple. I believe the main speaker was sitting in an armchair and the others were in normal chairs. It was not terribly impressive until the main speaker started talking. His voice was deep and resonating. Those of you who heard the voice of Phuntsok Rinpoche, you know what she was talking about. Whenever you hear the sound of Phuntsok Rinpoche, his sound is full of blessings and power. And then she said that it seemed to enter me and make profound sense to me, even though at the level of vocabulary I understood nothing. Honestly, I am not sure the words really mattered that much. The impact was all I needed. At first, I will admit it, I was bored, but I'm not someone who is ever bored for long, so I studied all those people on the stage. In particular, I studied the older Tibetan man who was talking. I remember that he was looking at me too, but I cannot be sure if that was my self-absorption or a false memory. Still, slowly, with being fully aware of the change, something opened in me. We can really see that Leah had lots of connection, lots of auspicious connection, and a deep understanding arose. At that moment, we have to see that she is very much connected to Rinpoche and being blessed by Rinpoche. She had a small insight or maybe a small enlightenment. She said that they carpet the walls and chairs in their mustard yellow and white became hollow, transparent, seemingly unreal. Her description is that empty, luminous quality. The swirls of emotion-ridden thoughts subsided. My hormone-stressed teenage brain was temporarily pacified. Dare I say, even silenced. Ironically, I came out of that church more a Buddhist and less a seeker. The Westerners, I think they're very straightforward with where they are. So she said that less than a seeker, more certain and much less confused. She didn't even understand what was talked about. She didn't even know who it was that's giving a teaching on the stage. She was simply taken by her parents. Looking at her experience, a child's experience, that is why from time to time when people bring their children to the events, to the Dharma teachings, I never stopped them. We can see that years later, those events sometimes imprinted a very profound imprint, leaves a very profound imprint in their minds. And in heart. And after years, they would still be able to remember that they went to so-and-so Dharma assembly or teachings with their parents. That is why I usually encourage the parents to take the children to Dharma assemblies. Leah continued to say that while I forgot the teaching and even the name of this great teacher for a long time, I never forgot the place and the change that had taken place in me. It was as if he had sealed me on my path. Not many months after that, I started attending teachings with my parents for real. That is to say, with the elation and excitement of a real student, and no longer as a child forced to follow along. Over times, for multiple times that followed, I thought of that yellow auditorium with that strange church, and the memory tugged at me. I asked my mom many times, who was that teacher? Where was that place? My mom, however, remembered it all only very vaguely, and she was never great with remembering Tibetan names, so it remained a mystery. Because I think Tibetan names sometimes could be long and has so many syllables, maybe she couldn't remember. Then a karma would have it through my editing work, that is the editing work through the Wisdom and Compassion publishing and the English group. She said that I became connected with Larangar. Through my editing work, I became connected to Larangar, and it is with deep gratitude and devotion to the great Khenpo Jigme Phuntsok for taking my mind and returning me to my true refuge, the Buddha Dharma, in the yellow light of that extraterrestrial church. What happened to Leah Groth is a great expression of that inconceivable blessing of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Sometimes it's because of that perfect, wondrous power of the ear root, and because of the connection of that gaze from Phuntsok Rinpoche, she had completely transformed and her path completely changed. What's extraordinary about highly realized being like Yijing Norwu is that they can not only tame the mind of, not only that they can tame the beings by giving Dharma teachings, that they can also transform their mind tremendously simply by their presence, their voice, their eye contact. And in this account, and I think it's really important if parents take their children to meet a noble teacher of high quality or to attend a Dharma assembly, through the blessings of these occasions, children of deep virtuous roots may be able to start a new page in their lives and then embark on the path that would reverse the wheeling of a samsara. Look at Leah. She just attended one class. She didn't even understand the content as a child of 13 years of age. She said that she didn't understand anything from Phuntsok Rinpoche, but she, of course, understood English that's spoken by Sanji Khandro, translated by Sanji Khandro at that time. So when we look at us, we've also made some auspicious connections, and it is not easy. We had to go through all kinds of ups and downs and all kinds of events. In Tibetan, we say that a little bit of a pebble that stuck in our shoe can only be felt by the person who wore it, but not known by the others, by anyone else. So being here, being on the path, we endured a lot to be here, to get here. Nowadays, we have different kinds of activities such as presentations after class and have different exams and so on. Not so sure if we will ever have the opportunity to give Dharma teachings of Shurangama Sutra to the others, for example. But now you have the opportunity to give the teaching of Shurangama Sutra to each other in the post-class presentation and discussion group. And then later you can tell others that, yes, I had given teachings on Shurangama Sutra at Larangar, which is true. So now that we have these opportunities, we should cherish it.